The Songwriter Chapter 12, Getting Used to Appreciation. I got on board the green double-decker bus outside the airport in Dublin. I noticed everyone greeted each other the same way. "God bless," they would say. I realised after a while they must have known the driver because he almost tilted the bus up on one end as we turned at every street on the way. I asked the driver, Mr. Two-Wheeler, if he could drop me off near Franchion's Lane at the youth hostel that was nearby. I got off the bus in the rain and was lucky to get a room all to myself. I had a window to the stars and a comfortable single bed. In the evening, I came downstairs with my guitar and sat down near the piano in the common room. And I was immediately joined by a fellow who sat down on the piano stool. I started to play some of my songs and he added some keys. An American lady came over to me and asked me for a light. I lit up her cigarette and she told me she loved me. I never had set eyes on the girl in my life and was knocked out by what she had said. I told her I love you too. She went away for a little while and then she returned with a fiddle and joined in a couple of the songs. The fellow playing the piano took a rest and he said to me, "I want to show you something. Follow me outside." He took me outside to his car and opened the boot of his car and produced an overproof bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey and said that it was a very rare drop and that he told me only a few bottles of this are made once every year. And then he said, "Come on, let's go have a drink." A few moments later, a good crowd had gathered and we sang and drank until the wee hours of the morning. There was no one came and tell us to stop or to keep the noise down. It was a fantastic session with about 6 of us, and in the end, before we had a break, we all sat down. Later on, I lay down in the bedroom and I woke in the morning. Most of the people there who were there the night before were getting ready to leave. And we all talked about the great night we had had. They told me that they enjoyed my songs and asked if I wrote them. I had never had appreciation like that before. It was new to me and something I could get used to. So in Dublin's fair city, I went with a song in my heart to have a look for the first time at the people on the street, and around every corner I found a theatre or a pub with an open invitation for a writer or a singer or a photographer or a comedian, an actor or an actress, a musician or poet, whatever you wanted to be. I saw a place with a wealth of history, bursting with talent. The Liffey people and the gypsy folk scattered their wares from O'Connell Street to St Stephen's Green. I took a seat in Sean O'Casey's pub and I listened for a while to the most beautifully spoken English you would ever hope to hear. The seat was occupied all along the bar with glasses all lined up like soldiers in a row, waiting for another order to come. The men in their caps and jackets all sat around talking about times long gone past, and the ladies dressed up like models, sitting around the tables with an elegance not seen much these days. In no hurry to leave, I sat there in the corner and I wrote the first few lines of a song called "Coming Back to Dublin." The people in the bar were in no hurry to leave. They sat talking about the love of life, and the conversations were like songs being sung. At the end of the night, I had finished my song, and I had needed maybe a place where I could go and busk it. So with the guitar under my arm, I went to O'Connell Street, and outside the GPO, I started to busk my song to no one in the rain. I've been around, a-roving around, like the crafty old fox chasing the hound. But oh, how it seems I've been just chasing dreams. Now it's time to come back to Dublin town. With the fa-la-la-dee-da, la-da-dee-da, I'm coming back. With the fa-la-la-dee-da to Dublin town. How I've missed you, Anna Liffey, now it won't be long till I'm with you. I turn around and you find me Dublin town. Excited I smiled as the tears fell down. So I wiped away all my memories, Dublin town. But it's hard to forget where your roots are set, when I've sown my seeds upon the holy ground. With the fa-la-la-dee-da-da-da-dee-da, I'm coming back. With the fa-la-la-dee-da-da-da-da-dee, Dublin town. How I missed you, Anna Liffey, now it won't be long till I'm with you. Turn around and you'll find me, Dublin town. Quell this wanderlust heart and my feet will tread no more the streets and the sidewalks of many a shore. No longer I'll roam, now I've come back home to settle down and last close the door. With the fa-la-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da, I'm coming back. With the fa-la-la-dee-da-da-da-da-da, Dublin town. How I missed you, Anna Liffey, now it won't be long till I'm with you now. Turn around and you'll find me, Dublin town. So I've sung the song and I saw a tall man walking up the street towards me in the rain. And he stopped in front of me as big as a mountain. He put his arms around me and he said, I love you. And he walked away. After that, I made my way home to the youth hostel in Frenchman's Lane. Day in, day out, the tourists arrived, mixing with the locals in the shops and the restaurants and nightclubs and bars. Things happen fast on the streets of Dublin. If you stop to have a look, you'll miss it. They're a weird and wonderful breed, the young and the old, the weak and the strong, and they belong to that place. In a light drizzle of the morning where I stood, busking, a lady came over to me and she said, I'll tell you what, do you know U2? I do, said I. And then she said, well, do you know Kevin Barry too? Sure I do, I said. Or do you think you could maybe do me James Connolly? She asked me. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do U2 for you, I said to her. See me, I grew up with the Bono and the lads. I knew them in their childhood days, she said. I played my original version of the U2 song. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And the lady began to dance and she started to sing along with me. The rain was getting heavy and she says to me, come on, let's go for a cup of tea. That's awful nice of you, I told her. And she answered, no problem, son. When the day comes when Molly can't get the visitor to a cup of tea, I'll stand on my hands and walk up to Liffey. She took me to a small coffee shop near the Abbey Theatre and we sat down at a table in the corner. The old lady went over to the counter and she asked the girl there for 2 cups of hot water. She brought over the 2 cups and placed them on the table in front of me, and then she pulled out 2 tea bags from her handbag and placed them in the cups. She jiggled them around a little bit and she put them back in her handbag, and I looked on as she produced 2 scones from her bag, some sugar and milk. Then she did the honours and we sat and swallowed down the tea and scones and chatted away like 2 swells. Aren't the shops just begging for some lifting? She asked me. I don't know. I've never lifted one before. We both laughed. I'm a shoplifter and every day I'm at work there, here and there. A bit of this, a bit of that. Have you ever been caught? I asked her. Once I had to go to court, she answered. What was it you stole, Molly? I asked her. I took a sheet and 2 pillowcases. They stopped me as soon as I walked out the shop. So it's nothing I could do. So I pleaded guilty but insane. Did you get off? I asked. She gave me a wink and said, they hadn't got a leg to stand on. Too sharp for them. I got a good behaviour bond. I enjoyed the cup of tea. Thanks, Molly, I said. I like your music, son, she said. I could get used to this appreciation, Molly, said I. Any time, she answered. Right then, I'll be seeing you, Molly. And I slipped her 10 punt into her hand and got up off the chair. I took to the street and brought a few postcards there at Dublin in the wee shop, took them down to the post office to send to my Aunt Lily in Belfast, just to let her know where I was and everything was okay. Then I went down the post office there, standing there and impressed by the size of it and the tall marble pillars, and the light that came streaming in through the building from the windows and the corners of every spot. And there I found a place to write a few words down on the postcards that I had bought a short time before. Hi, it's Paul here. I'm staying at the youth hostel in Dublin. The people are great and all's well. I hope the same is for you too. All my love, Paul. Then I get in the queue to get some stamps to post the cards off to Belfast. After that I went to have a look inside the Abbey Theatre. When I wandered in, there was some kind of exhibition on there, and people stood around drinking champagne from tall glasses, and that were being served canvas food brought to them by waitresses. No one even questioned me or stopped me. I walked through the doors and down into the theatre seats. At the very bottom there, a piano sat at the corner at the bottom of the stage, and I couldn't resist. I sat down and played a song I had written called Sweden. And I was expecting to get thrown out of the theatre, but nobody came. So I thought to myself, I'll play another one. So after that I played this little song I had wrote called The Crossroads. And after that I made way back up the steps and past the row of empty seats. There I got to the foyer, and I wasn't even challenged by anyone who maybe asked me what I was doing or who I was. Maybe they were all too drunk to have even noticed that I just played two of my songs inside the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. I was amazed by the amount of buskers around Dublin and spoke to some of them who I met at different spots around the city. Jerry was a friend of the famous Fury family, who were the driving force from Ballyfermot of folk music on the scene for decades. Jerry was even on the road with them as they toured around in different countries. I shared some of my songs with Jerry, who appreciated my work. Then there was Jilly, who I thought was a girl, but he was a fella. And he busked every day in the same spot, and each time I saw him he was singing the same song that I fell in love with. It was a Jimmy McCarthy song called Ride On. Jimmy played it on a semi-acoustic guitar that he had plugged into a small amplifier that was connected up to a car battery. Then there was Brian, who played with a famous band in England. He told me he had everything at one stage in his life: a home, family, and lots of money. That was before his addictions took them all away. Now he goes round busking some of Donovan's songs all over the place. We played together a few times while I was there, and his version of Colours was brilliant. There are many stories about great musicians that end up in the skids. That's part of the journey. It can eat you up and spit you out and leave you there with the dogs in the street. One day on my return to the youth hostel, the manager told me that the guard had come looking for me. And she told him I was out busking and that I'd be back later on, to come back then. I was shocked and wondered what was going on. And the next day, early in the morning, I had a phone call come through to the youth hostel. The manager brought me the phone and I said hello. My mother in Australia spoke to me to let me know that my father had passed away. I was speechless. I told her I wasn't able to get back to Australia because I had no passport. And I started to tell her some of the things that had happened to me since I left Sydney. I had never told any of my family what I was going through since leaving Belfast, or coming to Belfast, I should say, because I had never wanted them to be worried. Anyway, everything was okay now. I told them. And I told them every time that I was having a ball of a time. My mother said that Dad had died of a massive heart attack at a work function. For he was only in his 50s and he was still very fit. It was hard to understand or comprehend, but he was gone now, and I was 10,000 miles away and I couldn't get back for his funeral. The next day I left Dublin on a train for Belfast to be with my relatives. It was hard for me at that time because no one was able to provide any shelter for me due to some of my family issues that was going on. But luckily I had sent them a postcard from Dublin, and they were able to tell my mother where I was, to pass on the sad news of my father's death. My cousin walked me over to a homeless refuge called the Simon Community on the Cliftonville Road in North Belfast, for no one had any room for me in their house. So that place became my home for 6 months. A few of the local lads there were giving me some grief there, so I was transferred to one of the Simon Community's other cluster homes in High Park Avenue in the university area of Belfast. It was a good thing too that I told Pat from Kennington where I was living, because a letter came back to them and he sent it to me from the High Commission in London. They had received my replacement certificate of citizenship from Canberra, and now I was able to lodge my passport application with them. That day I told Gabriel, another homeless man like me, who lived at High Park Avenue in the Simon House. I told him the good news that I could now get my Australian passport. He asked me out that night to celebrate, and I accepted. So we headed into Shaftesbury Square and had a few drinks in some of the bars there. Just when everything seemed to have taken a turn for the better, something unexpected happened. As we walked out of this bar, a fellow outside comforted Gabriel around the throat with his hands, and they had a scuffle. A fight began, and I tried to break up the fight, and a small group then turned on me. Somebody got behind me and another in front of me, and I was pushed and pulled and heavily fell to the ground and kicked until I went unconscious. An ambulance was called, and I was taken to hospital with broken bones and fractures. I asked Gabriel after what it was all about, and he mentioned that he was part of a detox rehabilitation group at a mental health unit. One day there was a group therapy session, and an argument started with this guy over some issues, and that fella was the same one who spotted Gabriel as we walked out of the bar that night. And then he was part of the gang, that one of them apparently had a handgun, but the police had arrived and he put it away, so I was lucky to be alive. Gabriel had met the police and he made a report that was a key to making an arrest. So the arrest had been made, and I was lucky to be alive and sure. It was months later I had recovered and was paid a small amount of money from the criminal assault pool in the court system. So now I had enough money to buy a ticket to return to Australia. I went and I said my goodbyes to relatives in Ardoyne, and then I bought a ticket on a flight to London where I could sort out my Australian passport. Leaving Belfast behind wasn't that hard to do. End of chapter 12.